Right. So this is the second part of we're talking about the listening barriers. So self-barriers has self-focus, emotional noise, and criticism. Most of us are egocentric, self-focused. And it's human nature. But as we grow and mature, that changes. But ways that we can regain listening if we become focused on ourselves in a situation is that you can become aware of the problem. So it's just being conscious of your situation. Concentrate. Sometimes we really have to concentrate on listening to people. Maybe we're tired, maybe we're bored, maybe we're sleepy, whatever the case. It's really focusing. And then be active rather than passive. And being active is just that communication process where you are talking back and forth, the sending, the receiving, the encoding, the decoding back and forth. Then there's emotional noise. And emotional noise is a form of communication noise caused by the emotional arousal. What I mean by that, there are trigger words and trigger phrases, and it's not just words. So there are certain words that can just make people cringe or make people happy, and they're different for every single person. But there's also, it's not just words that can create emotional responses. It's concepts. Think of hot button topics. Gun control evokes emotion. Abortion laws evoke emotion. Lockdown drills evoke emotion. Prayer in school evokes emotion. These are all things that can hinder our listening. And then we also have criticism, which is pretty self-explanatory. We don't want to be criticized. It's not in our nature. I mean, it happens. We get criticized, but we don't like it. But, sometimes we shut down when we hear criticism. Then there's information process barriers. There's processing rate, information overload, and receiver apprehension. With that, the processing rate is some people think faster than you can speak. I do that a lot, and sometimes I miss information. And then information overload is you hear something, and you can apply so many different meanings to it. So sometimes we just go into overload trying to decipher what is being said or what has been said. Receiver apprehension is a fear of misunderstanding or misinterpreting the message. So sometimes you can be listening to someone and be like, oh man, did I understand the assignment? Did I get what they were saying? That's what they're talking about here in that barrier. And then it also goes into shifting attention, multitasking. Sometimes if we're doing multiple things, we're not 100% effectively listening. And cultural differences, that's a pretty big one. If you're speaking to someone from a different culture, there's going to be listening barriers because you may not understand the context of what they're saying. Or, they may say something that means one thing, but where you are from and how you were raised and what you know means something entirely different. And then there's context barriers. Context barriers there's a time barrier. If you schedule a class early morning, you're not a morning person, that's a barrier in listening because you're tired. If you schedule something around lunchtime, that's a barrier because you're hungry. Same with dinner, or maybe it's the end of the day and you've got stuff going on. Maybe you're just not effectively listening because of the time that you are to be listening. Or if you got somewhere to go and you have a buddy trying to talk to you, but you're not really listening to him because you're like, oh man, I really got to get here. That's what we're talking about there. And then barriers of place is just, you could be chatting with someone in your home and there could be a lot of noise going on. Washing machines, dishwashers, outside noise, televisions, phones, video games, fans. There could be all kinds of things going on that are creating noise, that are making it harder to listen. So those are all the different barriers. Next is improving listening skills. So step 1, it says turn off competing messages. Well, that makes sense. If there's something we can physically turn off to listen better, or mentally try to shut off, because sometimes it's internal, our noise is, and it makes it harder to listen. But if we can be aware that there's competing noises, then we can try to turn them off. Listening with your eyes. This is where the nonverbal comes in. We're listening to the verbal message, but we're also picking up nonverbal cues off of body posture, proximity, hand gestures. facial expressions, tone of voice, intonation, rate of speech, all that falls under listening with your eyes. And it's understanding both details and major ideas. So know your listening goal. Are you listening to enjoy something? Are you listening to learn something? Are you listening to evaluate? Are you listening to empathize? So under this, it's just finding your listening goals. I'm listening to this because I really like this song, or I'm listening to this because this is going to be on a test, or I'm listening to this because my friend's really upset and needs someone to talk to. And lastly, I just want to touch base on the improving your responding skills via the book. It talks about being descriptive. So don't start, when it comes to listening, it's really listening and taking note of everything. And then it's like, be timely, okay? Be brief, be useful, ask appropriate questions, paraphrasing, and imagine the conversation, anticipate. So with that, it's just, paraphrasing is really great when it comes to listening and responding effectively. With listening, paraphrasing, if someone has given you a message and a way to really clarify and distinguish that you've listened is that you paraphrase what was said. Oh, so what you're saying is that in communications, to be an effect, you can listen to listen, but you can listen to respond, and to be a good listening to respond, you take in all the information. That's all we're saying here. So folks, like I said, this was a really brief lesson on communication, listening, and responding. You can listen to listen, or you can listen to respond. And listening to respond, a lot of times is a conscious effort, but it's all part of the communication process that we keep going over every week. I hope that you have an amazing week. Thanks so much. Bye.